Hey everybody, Tim Ulbrich here. Welcome to this week's episode of the RX Money Roundup, where we give you our take on relevant financial news and updates, answer your questions, and break down examples of financial planning in action. Today, Tim Baker takes a question from a listener on how to determine whether or not it makes sense to purchase pet insurance. Before we get into that question, let me give a shout out to our financial planning and tax professionals at YFP that make this segment possible. At YFP, we support pharmacists at every stage of their careers to take control of their finances, reach their financial goals, and build wealth through comprehensive fee-only financial planning and tax planning. You can learn more and book a free discovery call by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Okay, let's hear from Javier in Puerto Rico.
Hey YFP, my name is Javier from Puerto Rico. So my wife and I, we recently purchased a 14-week-old golden retriever puppy. We love our puppy, but she's quite an expense. We purchased her for $2,000, and for these past two months since the purchase, we've spent around $1,211 on vet visits, meds, toys, pads, beds, and basically her basic needs. Thankfully, none of this has affected our financial plan, and I've been able to accommodate these expenses within our monthly budget. However, we've been told by the vet and friends of us that own older dogs to purchase pet insurance. To the best of my knowledge, in Puerto Rico, there's only one pet insurance company that covers chronic accidents and illnesses. It reimburses 90% of the claims, while I pay the remaining 10% plus the deductible, which is the only customizable option this plan offers. It doesn't cover preventive care and pre-existing conditions. It's a 30-day waiting period for chronic illness and 15 for accidents. And finally, if the insurance is not able to pay the vet directly, then I still need some money available to pay upfront and later submit the reimbursement. I've looked into this extensively over multiple angles, and my conclusion is that it may be good to have in case of emergencies, but it's also a gamble. My quote was for $50 per month with a $500 deductible. So what is your take on pet insurance, and is it really worth it for the life of the dog, or is it better to save up for an emergency fund? Appreciate any insight, guys.
Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever covered pet insurance. It's a good question. I think off of the off the rip, I think my reaction to pet insurance has always been not necessarily something that I believe in. I personally don't use pet insurance. We self-insure, and I kind of talk through what we do with Benji, our dog. But I think I had to come across in my research of people that are like it, and it's part of their financial plan. So let me talk about the pros of pet insurance. The pros are the financial protection that insurance provides you. So pet insurance can help cover expensive medical treatments, especially for emergency surgeries or long-term illness. And just like other ports, insurance, if you're a dog lover like me, you're maybe like there's some emotional anxiety and stress that can color your decision making process. If you overlay then a financial stress, again, I think that's kind of like the peace of mind that an insurance policy does, is that that you have coverage that can reduce the financial stress of making a difficult decision with regard to your pet's care. A lot of these insurance policies, I understand, it can be customized. So many insurance offer flexible plans, allowing you to choose coverages for things such as accidents, illnesses, or even wellness care. And they can actually be tailored for breed specific conditions, which I didn't know was a thing. But I found another planner was like, yeah, I really used, and again, not a commercial from them, he said it's called Embrace through Geico. They have an option of adding a wellness program as well, which is essentially like a doggy FSA that can be used for preventative care and medications. It's a use or lose provision, which again, I don't love those. But those are, again, some of the votes for pet insurance. I think the one, for, and I would typically be more in the against. And I think that there's a study that Consumer Reports did that said, pet owners on average end up paying $500 to $700 more in insurance premiums than they would with versus like out of pocket, vet costs. So that means on average that, your insurance, the pet insurance isn't like a financially sound investment. So like the premiums kind of outpace. So a lot of people will say like, what's the chance of like a major medical event where you have to really dip into your pocket? And probably the biggest thing, and I've heard this with other parts of insurance, is like increase in premium. So as your pet ages, it's not a fixed premium. As your pet ages, the insurance premium often increase, and that can be fairly unwieldy, which means that you end up paying more in premiums when your pet is more likely to need the medical care. So the big thing that people do without pet insurance, just like most insurance, is they self-insure.
Mm-hmm.
So things like life and disability insurance, you probably shouldn't self-insure. It's nearly impossible to do that. But with pet insurance, is one of those things that you could more easily insure. So this means that you save up money to cover a potential medical cost for your pet instead of paying premiums to an insurance company. And this is what Shay and I do,
So do you
Tim.
have like
So
a Benji bucket or what?
we
What
have
is
a
the?
Benji bucket. So
Okay.
we have a kids bucket. So we have our emergency fund, we have a home maintenance fund, we have all of our different high yield savings accounts,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of those high yield savings accounts then have sub buckets, right? So we have a kids high yield savings account, and each kid has a sub bucket. So Olivia, Liam, Zoe, and then Benji has a bucket, and Benji probably gets some of the like a lot of the dollars right now because we get him groomed. He's a big dog, so that can cost a lot of money. So we get him groomed on a regular basis, but then we kind of plus that up to basically account for, like, as he ages, we think that medical will be
Mm-hmm.
higher. So that's essentially what we do. So every year we kind of assess, and we'll probably put like almost like a cola ride on that. So if we're putting in, I'm not even sure how much we put in right now, I'd have to look, but maybe it's like $200 a month or $150 a month. When we kind of reassess our saving strategy, we'll probably plus that up, $25 or $50 more a month or whatever that is. So the idea is that we're using it kind of for the near term. Like, we know we're going to have them groom, we know we're going to have standard visits, but then that money is kind of earning interest, and when we do have a medical expense, we're just going to use that money versus filing a claim on an insurance policy. So I'm still pretty. I wouldn't say like I have a strong opinion either way. Again, $500 to $700 more, maybe for that peace of mind. Maybe I say, hey, that's not a big deal. I do think that there's probably a wider gap as your pet becomes older and older. So does it make sense to maybe have it early on and then let it lapse later? I don't know. So for me, our personal strategy, Tim, is to kind of self-insure for Benji, and
Yeah.
then let the chips fall where they may. So and we are fortunate enough to have disposable income, so if something really big were to happen, we would be able to like move some things around. I'd probably use part of the emergency fund to do that. So if I didn't have that, I might be a little bit more leaning towards having the insurance,
Mm-hmm.
the insurance there, but we decided to self-insure.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thought, Tim, is what is the ability to be able to self-insure, right? What does the emergency fund look like? What are other parts of the financial
Yep.
plan? What's going on? And we do something similar. We don't have a Charlotte fund, so like Javier, we have a golden retriever. We actually have two dogs. One is a little bit older black lab retriever, but our golden, the plan is to self-fund it. We don't use pet insurance, but the costs are real. I respect what Javier is saying, and I actually did I put a poll on LinkedIn recently where I was referencing ASPCA reported that the average individual spends about $1,400 per year on pet care.
Mm.
And my first reaction was like, that seems high, until I started to think about various costs, right? For, food, vet visits, vaccines, flea tick, heartworm, dog licenses, grooming, boarding when you're on vacation, all those things. And it's really a part of the financial plan we don't talk a whole lot about. So I was curious to hear from people, like, how much do you estimate spending on pet care annually? Here we're talking about insurance, one piece of it. And a third of people said 1,000 to 2,000, and a third of people said greater than 2,000 a year. And the balance were under 1,000. So this is real. It's a real expense of the financial plan.
I think we spend greater than 2,000. Benji's a golden doodle, so we get him groomed, and that's for whatever reason, it's a lot more expensive to get your dog groomed in Ohio than it is Maryland.
Really?
That was weird. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah.
So that was a big expense that jumped. Benji had his cancer scare earlier this year, so he had to
Mm.
go under the knife, and have a little bit of surgery, and hopefully he's okay. So like that inflated our expenses. So obviously pulling that some money from there. But again, like I probably on average we're higher than that.
Yeah.
I always joke with my kids that Benji's my favorite, and they're like, "Well, who's your second favorite?" I'm like, "Benji."
Benji.
Like, "Who's your third favorite?" Benji. So I'm a big dog person, and I can understand the love that people have for their animals, and wanting to be in a position to to take care of them, and hopefully not let finances come in the way of that. So I completely get that. The first job I ever wanted to be was a vet, Tim, and once I found out that I had to like put dogs down, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll do something else. So I get it. I completely get it. And I think it's important to plan for, Kel Surprise, have a plan for it, and just make sure that you feel comfortable. We talked about this with the emergency fund, Tim. Like, if you feel more comfortable plussing up your emergency fund,
yeah,
do that, right? If you feel more comfortable having a policy, stand, that's behind you when things hit the floor with your pet, then purchase one. I don't think that the numbers indicate a huge swing where you're like, oh, this is a terrible investment or this is a great investment, etc.
Well, and that's where I was going, is when I was looking at the comments of what people had to say, there was a lot of passion behind, like, they weren't using these words, but like, I see these costs, but they're a part of our plan for living a rich life. And I was like, that's it, right? It's
Yeah, that's the
aligning.
answer.
We're not suggesting like these are sunk costs.
Right.
And if Jess is listening to this and she feels like I'm giving off the impression I'm like a huge dog lover, I would be not being honest with myself. So like we have a golden, I'm not a huge dog lover. So there it is for the podcast. But I think that's so important, is like, yeah, we're talking about the dollars, we're acknowledging it, but if that's a part of the rich life plan, like, so be it. It's a piece of the puzzle. Let's put it in play and build around it.
Yeah. No hate. I mean, and that's where, my answer of like, it depends always comes in, because like, again, like, Benji's my favorite in the house, you not so much, like, and that's fine. Like, to each his own. And I think it's really aligning the resources that you have that, again, comes to fruition the richest life that you can live. So,
Yeah.
And again, for a lot of people, pets are a big part of that. And I think, if you feel more comfortable laying your head down on the pillow, knowing that you have that in your back pocket, like, do it. Like, so.
Great stuff, Tim. Well, we're 7.5 years into the podcast and we've never talked about this topic. So fun to do a new one.
Awesome.
We can't say that too often. But if you have a topic you'd like for us to cover, a question you'd like for us to answer on an upcoming episode, send us an email, info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. You can also send us a voicemail by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask. An important reminder as we wrap up the episode that the content is provided for informational purposes, is not intended to provide, should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. For more information on that, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thanks so much for listening and have a great rest of your week.